So a lot of people have been asking about firmware 310 and onward. So I'm going to do a little report here and kind of let you guys know basically how this firmware is. Now, for those that don't know, this is my new Samsung S95B, the 65-incher. It did come on firmware 310. Now, I do not have auto updates enabled and do have absolutely no plans on updating going forward. That being said, there are some things I do want to talk about as far as this update and things to look out for. The first thing I would need you guys to know is if you buy this from Best Buy, currently they have a sale, or not really a sale, technically a deal, bundle deal if you want, where you get the Samsung S95B and the Xbox Series X controller as a free gift. Now, this is important because they have all of these like apps that basically let you use Game Pass and stuff like that. You don't need a console, that whole thing. But the problem is, unless you're on the internet, you're not going to have access to that stuff. I mean, that's kind of self-explanatory because Game Pass doesn't work without it. But there is a gaming hub that on 1304 even you would have access to. But that gaming hub is not available initially, day one, on this software of 1310 if you don't update, or at the very least go online. So just be mindful of that. Like if you don't want to go online, you aren't going to have access to the said gaming hub feature. So yeah. Now, one of the biggest requests I've been getting is to talk about brightness. As you can clearly see, highlights are very strong. I right now have a Philips Hue lighting kit behind my television, and the television is brighter than that Philips Hue kit rocking maximum brightness, which should let you know everything you need to know about how bright this TV is, even after firmware 1310. Now, this is not to be mistaken for firmware 1302 or 1304, which again, I had a run-in with, and that was just terrible. The brightness loss in SDR was way too much. This is not the same thing. So for people wondering, yeah, on firmware, let's say 1098, like what you're on your 55-inch, maybe it's different with the newer firmware. The newer firmware restored brightness, so that is a very, very good thing. And continuing with the theme of giving you an idea of what the brightness looks like, I'm showing you this demo here so that you can see in real time it's really not dim at all. And I know that was one of the concerns that a lot of people had, of course, after my initial review of 1304, but after 1310.1 even, which is what I'm on right now, I don't experience any issues as far as brightness. And also, I've noticed that the real depth enhancer has been enhanced, so I do see a lot more 3D draw, 3D pull, that kind of thing, which is super duper impressive. Now, in addition to that, I also do notice that motion is refined, so I'm not noticing as many artifacts. So they have made an attempt to button this up. One area that they didn't button up the TV though, which I still remain extremely sour over, is when you want to go and do custom calibrations. So just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, right now you see the native color space, but if you wanted to go and do something custom and calibrate, all the colors break and it turns into basically a digital negative. This is still there. It's still a massive problem and they haven't fixed this. And again, just take a look at the mountains and watch the data just completely turn into a negative. I mean, it's trash. It's just the worst thing. And frankly, this is what keeps this TV from being able to be truly calibrated to the best of my ability and anyone else's. It's a big downside. And so I think rather than appeasing Vincent Teo on HDTV Test and ruining the TV with prior firmware, I think they should have focused on fixing this, because this is the most important thing. Like, you can't even use it. So I think that's something that I really am still very sour about with this TV, and it still is going to persist. So if you're somebody that likes to calibrate, well, tough, because frankly, as you're seeing in real time, it's going to look like a digital negative. And I think this is the one thing that really cripples the television. I mean, look at the foliage and what happens. I mean, it's a massive crushing of data. And so I think all that kind of put together sours the experience a bit. But in terms of the picture quality and like the initial complaints that I had, again, yes, I do hate that this turns into a digital negative still. That sucks, and I want them to fix that. However, all things said and done, you do have refinements to the 3D depth draw. You do have refinements to the brightness returning back to normal for SDR. You do have refinements to motion being smoother. I mean, outside of that, it's all right. It's fine. Now, A little special note here, colors do not pop still as much as it did on 1098. This is due to the luminosity behind the colors. It's not quite as intense, but colors are every bit as vibrant. You do need to put a ridiculous, and I'm not even joking here, I've spent I think the last 3 or 4 days just literally trying to adjust this television. You need to spend a ridiculous amount of work calibrating this TV up because it just has a horrible freaking time. I mean, hello, calibration tools literally don't work. So you have to be very creative and know how to get around that. So that for me really sucks. But if you don't want to have to worry about that hassle, you don't have to. Join my membership for $5 and I'll be able to condense 4 days of work essentially into a few minutes of a video, and you'll be able to benefit with the best picture settings that you can find on this device. That being said though, 1310.1. It's not bad. It does a good job of fixing a lot of stuff that they broke in the prior firmware that made me return it in the first place. So if that's the report you were looking for, there you go. If you have any questions about this firmware, ask them down below. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching the #1 brand in honesty. And until the next video, I'll see you guys later.